Hello, my friends. It's very nice to see you again. I hope by the time this episode comes out, there's not a world war going on. What do you think, Mateo? We're safe for another week or so? Maybe. All right. Well, let's hurry up then and get this out before that happens. So today we're going to talk about this lawsuit in regard to the Donald Trump federal case, of the election case. We're not going to talk about that case. We're going to talk about a separate lawsuit that media outlets filed so that they could televise that trial, okay? So this is where lawyers are great, right? As if that big federal case is not enough, Zeke. All these companies filed a whole separate lawsuit just so they could film that trial, all right? So now we have a separate lawsuit over that, and that's what we're going to talk about. It's actually a very big deal, and it's something that I am very passionate about, so I'm excited about this episode. And of course, at the end, Mateo, dad jokes, all right? And thank you to all of you that have been sending me dad jokes. I can't believe it's become a thing now where all these people are sending me dad jokes. I really do dig it, all right? Should we do a little sample of dad jokes right now just for the hell of it? Like, why not? Dad, can you make me a peanut butter sandwich? Abracadabra, you're a peanut butter sandwich. All right, let's go. So at the end, we'll do a bunch of dad jokes. Okay, so here's the story with this particular case. Now, and I did an episode about this earlier. The federal government has filed a criminal case against President Trump alleging that after the November 2020 election where Joe Biden won, according to the federal government, okay, I'm not taking sides here, after that election, then Donald Trump and his cohorts began a plan to try to win the election that they lost. And by doing that, what they were trying to do is get all of these fake electors to vote and submit these votes to Congress. And those votes would have basically said, oh, Donald Trump won in Georgia, Donald Trump won in Michigan, Donald Trump won in Arizona, when he didn't. And their hope was they were trying to get Congress to count the fake votes instead of the real votes. And that Vice President Pence, who's supposed to be the last person to sign off on the, who won the election. And this is usually just like a ceremonial thing, but they wanted him to sign off that Trump won, not Joe Biden, or at least not sign anything. And then we just keep the status quo, which was Donald Trump was president. Okay. And all of that was kind of, an effort to illegally vote and illegally overturn the election results. All right. So that's a big case, right? I mean, you're alleging the president of the United States basically committed treason, all right? And now the federal court scheduled this trial for March 4, 2024. Now, I have a bet with my buddy Thomas T, and I bet him that the trial will not happen by April 1, 2024. So if it does go forward in March 4, which I don't think it will, I think it'll be delayed, I'll lose that bet, all right? So anyway, there is a very important federal rule of criminal procedure, and that is Rule 53, and that rule states that the court cannot allow criminal cases to be recorded, okay? And now comes this particular lawsuit, and this is a big lawsuit. We're talking, I'll just, ABC, right? The Associated Press, Bloomberg, the Los Angeles Times, the Wall Street Journal, Politico, all these other entities, Univision, and all of the Washington Post, all of them joined together and filed this lawsuit telling the federal court that they want to have the right to record this trial so that if the trial goes forward, then we could all watch it, right? I mean, that's the point of this lawsuit. So they are challenging. Now, it's not going to be easy because think about it. It's the federal court's procedural rule, and they're asking the federal court to overturn their own rule. Do you see what I'm saying? So that's why it's like they definitely don't have home field advantage. Do you see what it's the toughest thing to do when you're challenging a federal court and you're going to the federal court to challenge the federal court. Darn it! That's always a very difficult task. So that's what the uphill battle is. So I'm going to walk you through it, and I want to make sure I point out that this is one of the few times in any of my podcasts that I take a strong position, and that position is, gosh darn it, it should be televised. From my point of view, I think everything should be televised. Like, there should be such a high standard for not televising a trial, and I think this one has to be televised if it goes forward. It just has to be, in my opinion. Right? And I feel very strongly about it. And Mateo made a good point. He said, yeah, let's televise it. And then we have like football commentators like commenting during the trial. And there's Donald Trump and he's going to the podium. He's going, he's there. Wouldn't that be cool? Right? And there's Joe Biden in his wheelchair. Who's going to roll him up today? Right? And things like that. I think that would be kind of cool. I think you're right. That would be kind of cool. What else would they say? Oh, there's the lawyer. He's going left. He's going right. And then Donald Trump's lawyer, his lawyer from New Jersey, anyway. All right. So that is all my opinion. I'm very, very sorry. So I'm going to, explain this and kind of, like I said, I'll walk you through it. Okay. So what we have here is this lawsuit. Now it's what they're saying here. The first point of view that they're making, the media companies here, is they kind of like explain, okay, we understand the rule, but this is so important, this particular case, because we have a former president and we have, he could be the next president, right? We have, the election, the presidential election trying to be overturned. And it was a very, the way they tried to overturn it was just kind of like changing a few electoral votes, and had just Vice President Mike Pence been in on it with them, or a few other Congress members, then we could have had a really effed up situation, right? This is such a big deal, and that's why the federal government is now charging Donald Trump with all these crimes. And they had charged all these other people with these crimes, and the whole the January 6th protesters. The goal for them being there was to kind of influence Mike Pence and influence the other Congress members to not approve the correct results of the election, but instead to approve the fake results, which is Donald Trump winning the 2020 election. So. It's such a big deal, and it's so like, wow, maybe we have to like change the process, so that this doesn't happen again, or that nobody saw something like this coming. It was that kind of crazy and brazen, and that the federal government is saying like no charge like this has ever happened, especially with the freaking sitting president. Usually voting fraud cases is like somebody voting for their mom or somebody like who wasn't allowed to vote. Because they were like an ex-felon or something, they vote. That's usually what the cases are. So this one is so important that these, that the media companies are saying is that we have to let the public see it. Now, in here, they go over kind of, how all of this kind of started and kind of some of the history behind that rule. And that the history behind why the federal government made this rule that doesn't allow cameras in criminal cases. It's actually, okay, let me explain. It's actually an amazing reason why. All right. So there was this lawsuit, this criminal case against Dr. Sam Shepard back in the 1950s. All right. And what happened in that particular case, it's actually a very interesting case. Have you ever watched the movie The Fugitive with Harrison Ford? And it was before your time, Mateo. It was kind of like loosely based on this guy. All right. So this doctor, he's a very wealthy doctor, and he had his buddies over, in July 4th, 1954. And then early that morning, it's like they were all partying the night before on July 3rd, and early morning, July 4th, his wife was killed. And Marilyn Shepard was killed. And the way, there was, according to Sam Shepard, there was an assailant. Some people said they called it the one-arm bandit. Maybe he only had one arm because of the way he swung this or swung that. But there was an assailant, and that assailant came in the house, stole a couple things, killed his wife, and then on his way out, Sam Shepard tried stopping him, and that guy beat up Sam Shepard on his way out. And so he was all bloodied and everything, and he had his wife's blood on him because he was trying to save her, So that's a very interesting murder case, right? In 1954, and because he was such a popular person, and he had an amazing house, like oversitting the lake and everything in Ohio, so it was a very, very big trial. And when the trial actually happened later in 1954, there were cameras, there was media, and it was a state case. And then the media, the cameras, the Cleveland Post was all over everything. And he was found guilty of murdering his wife in 1954 and then sentenced to prison. Now, after that, he filed an appeal, Mateo. The appeal was based on, because there was such a media circus, and because all the media, they were kind of explaining, oh, he did kill her, this is what he did, and blah, 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 that it tainted the jurors, and that the jurors were biased because of the media, and then because everyone was like watching what was going on and they thought he killed her, that jurors were scared to vote and to vote or rule that he was innocent, right? Because like everyone's already saying he's guilty and they're already biased. They're nervous that if they find him not guilty. So in his appeal, Sam Shepard, he's saying that the trial was it was an unfair trial because of those reasons. Now, in the Constitution, there is a Sixth Amendment right to a fair trial and a fair jury and fair legal representation. So he's saying that because the Ohio court allowed all of that media circus around in 1954, that his case was, that it was not fair. All right. I think that's kind of a stretch, but over the years, he goes through the appeal and he loses the appeal. He loses another appeal. And then finally, when he gets in the federal court, eventually he wins. And the United States Supreme Court ruled in his favor in 1966. So he was released in 1964, but his Supreme Court decision came in 1966. And he was released because one of those federal courts said, we're going to grant him this thing. And the Supreme Court, the appeal was to the Supreme Court. So he was released like 10 years later, basically. And in 1966, the United States Supreme Court made a decision, all right, in his case, Shepard, in the Shepard Supreme Court decision, and they stated that cameras in the courtroom for criminal cases could violate the Sixth Amendment right of defendants. And because of that, it is allowed if the court wants to ban cameras. You with me? So this is the United States Supreme Court, because obviously the media company said, well, it's our First Amendment right that we could see what the hell is going on, and the balance, the Supreme Court said is, well, you could have the transcripts, okay, and you could have, you could read the transcripts and whatever, but you don't have the right to have like videotapes. My favorite is the rule. It also said at one point, no radio. You still have a transistor radio, Mateo? That's way before your time. Did you ever have? Okay, good. I know Zeke did. Zeke is freaking grew up on transistor radios, I actually do have one to this day, and I use it. My daughter was like, what the hell is this? And I said, it's a transistor radio. Why do you have that? I think she thought I was like communicating with aliens, Zeke, or something like that. I said, no, because I like to go on walks, and sometimes like some sports games, they're only on AM radio. And to use AM radio, you can't use your iPhone. Isn't that crazy that the iPhones do not have access to radio, like real radio? You have to like have an app. You have to be on data or on Wi-Fi, and it's hard to do that on some walks, right? So I actually like a radio. Da, 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 da. Okay. So yeah, the Supreme Court said radio and television recordings and things like that, a court could ban it because it hurts the defendant's Sixth Amendment rights. And the balance, so that you can have your First Amendment rights, is that you could read the freaking transcript. And I can't stand, okay, imagine you go to a movie, right? You want to go watch Top Gun or, Mateo's Barbie movie or something, right? You want to watch a movie like that, and then you go and you're about to watch the movie, you're all excited, and they say, wait a minute, you can't watch the movie, but what we're going to do is we're going to give you the screenplay to the movie, right? A lot of people going to read that screenplay? No, it's not going to be the same. You don't see the sights, you don't see the sounds, right? And yes, Mateo wants to go on Pornhub.com, but instead they just give him a transcript of what happened. All right, cool. He's like changing what he's like watching right now on the internet right now as we speak, this guy. Okay. So listen, can we get back to business now? All right, let's get back to business. Okay. So we get back to business. So what I'm saying, the reason why I'm saying all of this is because the transcripts and everything, it's not the same thing. You don't see what's going on. You can't really like gauge people's reactions and how they look and how they're talking and things like that. I know watching this must be boring, right? Imagine reading my my transcript of this podcast. Oh my God. Okay. So anyhow, all right, let's get to it. So that's why I don't like that kind of and to this day, the United States Supreme Court, when they have their hearings, when they're questioning attorneys and having the oral briefing and everything, it's not taped. You can't tape it, and you can't watch it. You can't do any of that. So it's just it upsets me. Okay, so anyway, so that was the United States Supreme Court's decision. Now, it's going to be an uphill battle. The beautiful part. Way later in the 80s, there was a different case. There was a guy named Presley. Okay, not Elvis Presley, but same spelling. And it was a criminal case in Georgia. And in that criminal case in Georgia, it was like he was like convicted of drug trafficking. And his uncle had wanted to come to see the criminal trial, and he wanted to come to like when they were selecting the jury. And the Georgia criminal case state court said you can't be here while they're looking, they're asking for the jury or something, or they're trying to select the jury and doing the voir dire and everything, right? Another Latin, voir dire, okay? We have to put it in italics. Lawyers love using Latin words, okay? I'm only using it because that's what we do, all right? So they kicked that uncle out of the defendant, and then the defendant ends up losing that case and then files an appeal. And then the appeal said that was not fair that they kicked out my uncle from being in the audience and watching the case. And that Georgia had just like a blanket rule that said under no circumstances could people watch, the jury selection, for example. And then it goes to the United States Supreme Court. And then this is in the 80s. So it was like about 20 years after the Sam Shepard. The United States Supreme Court said, well, you can't have a blanket rule that says no, nobody watching. Anything you have to allow a kind of an application, or you have to let somebody, ask for it formally. And then if you have formal reasons why you want to deny it, then you have to do that. Like you can't just, you see what I'm saying? So then they said, okay, you can't just have a blanket rule. You have to allow for some exceptions. And if you apply for it and they're you deny the exception, the court has to at least explain why. All right. So they broke a little bit with that rule in the sense that they said, okay, like I said, you have to allow some exceptions. All right. So now what these media companies are saying is that, well, gosh darn it, this is the perfect case and the perfect time for that exception, so for us to videotape this trial. They did, and they said first is, it is of utmost importance and, public interest, this case. And they go back to the Aaron Burr, Vice President Aaron Burr, when he was tried for treason in 1807, Zeke might remember that. Zeke's a bit older than the rest of us here. In 1807, when he was tried for treason, the Justice Marshal, it was such a big deal, and so many people wanted to come watch it that they took it from like their little courthouse to like a big hall in Virginia, so they could have the trial there, and everyone that could come came in 1807 and this and that. He was ultimately found not guilty. The treason was, they said that he was trying to get these states in the West to join King George III of England, that tyrant king of England, King George III, but they didn't win, and he was found not guilty. But it was a crazy importance to the people. And then the law firm for all these media companies are saying all of that because they're saying, fast forward to today, it's like you have a president, that was a vice president, this is the president that's being tried for something kind of similar to treason, and it says overturning the election and everything, and that it's of utmost importance. And they cite, when the indictment of Donald Trump in this particular case, like millions of people were watching the indictment. Not the actual indictment, because you can't have a camera in the freaking courtroom, but him going to the courthouse and everything. And they do cite in Georgia, he's tried for the similar thing in the state of Georgia, Donald Trump. That state is saying, they published like that stupid mugshot. I've said it before. I thought that was a little overboard having to publish his mugshot, but they published it. Everybody wanted to see it. They said they may or they likely will publish that particular state court case. And this law firm is saying that is, a lot of people are happy about that. Like, they're kind of showing that there's a big public interest in watching this trial. And then the other thing that us lawyers like to do is, I'm kind of like, okay, what has changed? Meaning, like the Sam Shepard case and these cases from the past where there was cameras and everything. Back in the good old days, it was very difficult. Like, it would scare jurors because you have these big cameras in the courtroom. And one of the cases, there was Charles Lindbergh. There was this trial where he was like being extorted money to get like a child back that was being held ransom. And there was that trial was videotaped and everything. But it was very intrusive because you have these big cameras and these big recorders and everything. And so what they're saying here is they're like, well, that is true for the cases back then in like the 40s and the 50s and the 60s and 70s. But now, right, Mateo, you don't need all of that to record something. You could have like a little freaking camera, at the top of the courtroom, or a couple of cameras that are barely noticeable, so that it doesn't intimidate jurors and intimidate witnesses, and that you could have the voice recordings. So the lawyers, they try to like differentiate cases. Like, so this case is different, Your Honor, than the 1954 case of Sam Shepard, because the cameras that they had in that courtroom were as big as this freaking table, right? So that it was, it made the courtroom a little bit clunkier. It made walking around different. It made things like be more intimidating and intrusive. Whereas now we could just have like a few cameras around the room, a few microphones, and that's all we need, so that it won't be as intimidating and intrusive and all of that. And so, Your Honor, because of that difference, and because this is so a case of such national importance, that we should allow the cameras to be in. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, that's kind of how we roll as lawyers, okay? The other way that we roll as lawyers is, well, we have a real life example of an extremely important criminal case where cameras were in the courtroom and justice was still served, okay? Do you remember this Derek Chauvin? You remember that name? So he was the guy, the police officer in Minnesota, who was found guilty of killing the unarmed George Floyd. He was like sitting his knee on the guy's neck for an extended period of time, and then George Floyd died, and then he was tried for murder, and that was videotaped. Remember, it was like live feed, and so they say to the court here, they're like, well, we have a real life example of a criminal case that was recorded and that was live cast, and that You could hear the testimony of the different witnesses. You were able to see everything, and the cameras were pointed in such a way where the jurors were not ever shown or heard. And then because of technology today, the courtroom was able to stop the cameras when like something sensitive was happening, or the lawyers were asking something, or the jury was walking in, walking out, whatever, so that we could stop everything, because it was easy to do. So we have a real life example, Your Honor, of this trial, this criminal case against Derek Chauvin, where everything went fine in the sense of the cameras and the recording, and he was found guilty, and it wasn't overturned because it was videotaped, and the jurors were not intimidated. People didn't even know who they were. Do you see what I'm saying? So that's the other way that us lawyers kind of roll, and that is by kind of showing, just this real life example. So the court would have to somehow, actually, it's not okay. The entity that's going to oppose this is the United States government. This is where it's funny. Okay, so the United States government is where the trial will be. In that courthouse. The United States government is where the lawsuit to televise the trial is being held, and then the United States government, the attorney, the prosecutor, they're going to oppose this. The Donald Trump team said that they actually want courtroom cameras, so they haven't decided if they're going to oppose this motion. But the prosecutor has said they're going to oppose it. So the prosecutor then will have to show, okay, why was the Derek Chauvin trial televised and everything was fine without a hitch, right? But why are you then concerned about this trial? So they're going to have to oppose this, and they're going to have to answer that. My guess will be that they'll say that because this case is so much going to be so much more publicized, and that they're going to point out like grand jurors in the Georgia case. For example, somehow like some of those jurors' names were, what's the right term? Doxed. Is that right? That's the right term? So some of the jurors, their names got published and their addresses were published, and then death threats were made to them. So what the prosecutor will say in retort will be that, well, this case, unlike the Derek Chauvin case, is so much more, going to be so much more popular, and so much more like the polarization and the emotion and this and that we may have some people that publish the jurors' names. And if that happens, God forbid, everything's going to be, thrown out. And if that, in the sense that it will be an unfair trial, it'll be unfair regardless of who wins. It'll be unfair to the government if they lose, and it'll be unfair to Donald Trump if he loses, right? If these jurors are being outed and their information is being spread on the internet. So that's going to be the government's, opposition to this. I think, again, I am very, very, this is very important to me. I think that's nonsense, because I think that could be stopped with the right kind of provisions and safeguards. Like, that shouldn't happen. And if that does happen, then they just, whatever, they get extra protection. I mean, we know the judges' names. People list the judges' addresses all the time, right? We know where some people have like Obama's address. Mateo, what's your address? I'll send it. Here, look in the links. I'll put it in the links below. I'll put Mateo's address and social security numbers in the comments below. Okay. So yeah, and then we'll see. Let's do a test run. I'll put your social security number and address in the comments, and we'll see if somebody does something with it. Is that cool? All right, there we go. Okay. My prediction is the court is going to give the media companies the middle finger, okay? Because that's what the federal courts do. They're just like I don't think the federal court is going to allow the cameras. What do you think? Do you think I'm wrong here? No, yeah, I think they're going to say something like, we're so worried and we want to ensure the Sixth Amendment right to Donald Trump, even if he's saying, I'm not going to oppose this, the only saving grace is if he doesn't oppose it, then they might, but the government will say, yeah, but, we have the right as prosecutors to have a fair trial. And I don't see it. The federal courts are so... it used to be the case that if you go to a federal court and you just have a stupid cell phone, they wouldn't let you in because the cell phone has a camera on it. Now they let you in. But if you take a picture or something, I don't even like to take a selfie outside of the courtroom, when I'm at the federal court. So I don't think it's gonna win. Dad jokes. Let's do it. Let's have a little bit of fun here with some dad jokes. I have some good ones today. Okay. Let's see, dad jokes. All right. What do you call an angry carrot? A steamed veggie. Where do polar bears keep their money? In a snowbank. That was on the lower side, huh? Hey, Zeke, how do you make an egg roll? You push it. Yay or nay? Yeah? Okay. All right, just one or two more I have here. Why do cows wear bells? Because their horns don't work. I don't get that. Do they have horns? Oh, they have horns, but they don't work. They don't make noise like car horns. Okay, I get it now. Okay. All right. What did the triangle say to the circle? You're pointless. Woo-hoo-hoo. That one I love because I love math and geometry. Okay. Rest in peace, boiling water. You will be missed. Yeah? Okay, I also like chemistry. That's why I wanted to make sure I do that. Okay. I ordered a chicken and an egg from Amazon. Now we're gonna know what came first. See you next week.